Okay. I call this meeting to order at 3:02 p.m. on March 22nd, 2023. Roll is taken by means of sign-in sheet. I hope you've all signed in. Even if you're a guest, please make sure you do sign in. There are several alternates present today. It's Ashley Bowers for Janine Gradetsky, Lauren Horn Griffin for Jeffrey Rowland, Mandy Lopez for Fabio Del Piero, Roger Orrock for Sarah Aronson, and John Snow for Akeem Herman. Are there any other alternates whom I haven't noted? Did you get Meredith? Yeah. Anybody else? Okay. We move on to introduction of guests. We have John Snow, who will present proposals from the policy committee. Provost Fellow Theda Daniels-Race will present on open educational resource and affordable educational resource committee. Louis Mohammed will present the confirmed nominations for EPSEC positions. Michelle Zerba will present the sabbatical committee report. And Sam Staggs will be here to say a few words about the resolution 2302, which will feature later today. There are no public comments registered. Do we have a quorum? Yeah, we have a quorum. Minutes were circulated via email from our last meeting, February 16, 2023. Is there a motion to accept the minutes? Discussion? We now move to the vote. All those in favor? Against? Abstentions? Okay. The minutes from February 16, 2023 are approved. We now move on to Faculty Senate President's report. Dear Senators, I hope that you had a restful yet productive spring break. Here are some highlights from a longer document that was sent to you via email earlier today. Campus infrastructure. The state of our campus infrastructure continues to be a frequent area of concern for faculty, staff, and students. In addition to the highly variable temperatures in buildings across campus addressed by representatives from facility services at our last meeting, we are regularly contacted by faculty regarding other major issues across a wide array of buildings. In the last few weeks alone, pieces of concrete have fallen from the ceiling in Nicholson Hall, and the Life Sciences building was without power for nearly 10 full days. Just this week, a pipe burst in the ceiling of Thomas Boyd Hall, flooding offices and resulting in water cascading from the ceiling. Faculty Senate leadership is in contact with representatives from academic affairs about these concerns, and we're also thinking about ways to raise awareness of these issues outside of the immediate campus community to produce the changes necessary to address these deficiencies. These serious issues are not only a matter of discomfort and safety, but they go against our university's mission as a, quote, leading research extensive university, end quote. That would be impossible to achieve if the lights of universities' buildings are either literally out for days or ceilings collapse in spaces where we do our research. We hope to be in touch with you with additional information. Zero-based budget and graduate student stipends. Questions remain over many elements of the new graduate student funding model, including how and if graduate students will be provided with health insurance as part of the new packages. The latter is especially concerning as graduate students at LSU have expressed a greater desire to have better, more affordable health insurance than a higher yearly stipend. The EPSEC has not heard any development on this issue from the graduate school. We support our graduate students in their requests and will remain in touch with graduate student leadership as we continue to advocate on their behalf. Faculty Council meeting. As a reminder, the Faculty Council meeting will take place on Monday, April 17th at 2:30 p.m. at the Royal Cotillion Ballroom at the Union. Please be sure to communicate this to your colleagues and encourage them to submit potential items for inclusion on the meeting agenda by emailing facultysenate@lsu.edu. The FSEC has created a special committee to assist us in identifying potential items to suggest to Academic Affairs and the Office of the President, who ultimately control the agenda. Registration for the meeting will follow shortly. Supporting faculty in the face of emerging challenges. Like our colleagues across the country, LSU faculty continue to monitor developments in other states which have the potential to reduce the independence and academic freedom of institutions of higher education. At its meeting on March 8th, the FSEC passed a resolution declaring that we stand in support of academic freedom and in solidarity with our colleagues in Florida and elsewhere who are confronting these challenges. In further support for academic freedom, on February 25th, Vice President Danielle Terone and Member at Large Param Singh attended Association of Louisiana Faculty Senate's meeting, where there were discussions of the state budget for higher education, challenges to tenure, and the Benefits Committee's resolution on the optional retirement plan. Faculty Senate leadership compensation. At the beginning of the academic year, Provost Hegarty and Faculty Senate leadership investigated the shared governance practices at peer institutions such as the University of Arkansas, University of Houston, University of Tennessee, and University of Maryland, among others, and discovered that we were an outlier in not providing course releases and a stipend for the Faculty Senate president in recognition of the extensive obligations and professional sacrifices this position entails. I am happy to report that Provost Hegarty has made it a priority to bring us into line with our peers by institutionalizing these practices at LSU, and I thank him for strengthening faculty governance and recognizing the immense time and effort that the Faculty Senate president puts into serving the faculty and broader campus community. Policy statement and permanent memorandum development and revision processes. Recent events on campus have drawn attention to the processes by which policy statements and permanent memoranda are developed and revised. One issue which has focused attention on these procedures came from the IT Governance Council, which is working on a number of new policy statements governing various aspects of students, faculties, and staff's utilization of technology on campus. The FSEC will be meeting with representatives from the ITS in early April to learn more about these policies. Additionally, Vice President Terone and I recently attended a meeting with representatives from Academic Affairs to better understand how these policies are developed and revised. It was a productive meeting that left us with an impression that while good faith efforts are undertaken to include the relevant stakeholders when these documents are created or revised, there's an opportunity to improve the PS and PM revisions process and make it more transparent. The Faculty Senate Policy Committee has passed a recommendation that a formal process be created governing how these documents are created, revised, and improved. And we agree that it would be an excellent idea that could avoid unintended and unanticipated negative outcomes by including more expansive feedback earlier in the process. LSU Early Childhood Education Laboratory School, better known as ECELP. The availability of reliable and affordable childcare has long been understood to be an important factor in the professional success of faculty, staff, and students with young families. The Senate passed two resolutions, 7912 and 8830, speaking to this need, which aided in the development of the on-campus childcare center. Over the last year, the FSEC has heard from a number of faculty and staff with children at what is now the ECELP, who have reservations about recent and proposed operational changes, particularly to the school calendar. The FSEC will be meeting with the representatives of the Staff Senate, Graduate Student Association, ECELP, and School of Education, which oversees the preschool. The meeting is scheduled for March 29th, and the aim is to begin a dialogue about how the concerns and needs of each stakeholder group can be accommodated. If you have any specific concerns about ECELP or would like to make a public comment at that meeting, please contact me directly. Teaching online courses. A number of faculty members have contacted me recently expressing surprise about the intellectual property practices governing the development and delivery of online courses at LSU. While online instruction is a valuable tool in the landscape of contemporary higher education, we strongly encourage every faculty member contemplating teaching in this format to familiarize themselves with the various policies involved, particularly those which determine ownership of course materials. The Office of Research and Economic Development has developed a useful webpage which provides links to various bylaws, permanent memoranda, and policy statements that address intellectual property policies. It is a good resource to utilize as part of your research. There are several other points in my longer report, namely trainings that are available in the coming weeks. So please refer to that longer document. There are useful links. Thank you for your continued support on behalf of yourself and your colleagues. It strengthens our advocacy for you, your departments, and colleges. We are always stronger together. This concludes my report. Are there any questions? Go ahead, Joe.
Hi, I was wondering how much the president will get paid for being president. From the number of years that I've spent on Faculty Senate, it's always been a volunteer position.
Yeah, so we did extensive research on our peer institutions. So they varied between $10,000 and $50,000. And this position is on the lowest end. It's going to be $10,000 for the as a summer stipend and full course release.
Okay.
Which is in par with we actually on the lower end of our peer institutions.
When I polled some members of the Coalition on Intercollegiate Athletics, they didn't have that size of a stipend, and mainly they had some discretionary funds.
It's on.
Having occupied that position at my previous university, the Senate president, the president-elect got 1/9 salary, so 1 full month, and 1 course release each semester. The Senate president got 2 summer months and 2 course releases each semester.
Mm-hmm.
This is interesting news, but as far as the compensation for serving for a service position, but I'm curious, is this going to be system-wide so that all 8 Faculty Senate presidents will be compensated since it's coming from the provost office?
I'm not aware that it's a system-wide practice. This is just the first step in this process. So I really hope it will be a domino effect in the system. We are the flagship institution and other institutions look up to us. And I strongly encourage Eunice, Alexandria, and Shirit Shrivepur to do the Faculty Senate's leadership to go to their respective chancellors and bring this to them.
But this is coming from the provost, right?
Yes.
So when they go to the provost?
Well, I think you should address it to the provost. I mean, I didn't make that decision.
On item number 2, zero-based budget graduate student stipends, about a month ago, my department and I think others received notification from the graduate school that we had to submit a petition to be considered a special petition for non-terminal degree, something or another. It's a very long phrase. And we submitted that at the end of February. Have you all learned anything about the timeline for when we'll find out whether or not we will have GAs, because we've already kind of passed the period when we can use those as a competitive offer to students?
Yeah, I haven't heard anything. I'm on the stipend implementation committee that kind of petered out. So I don't know if Jim can speak to that.
Sorry, I spoke at length with the provost about it. Must have been about 10 days ago. We notified, I think, 3 of the programs that were kind of straightforward, very easy things. And then we have a working plan. So the bottom line is we're planning to get it out within probably within the next 4 or 5 days. And this is actually what you say is to be able to sort of make multi-year offers is the key thing that approval would allow programs to do.
Any other questions? Okay, I guess microphone is telling me to move on. So we now move on to the unfinished business. And it's the resolution 2302, proposed revisions to clarify expectations around course grading and communications sponsored by Faculty Senate Executive Committee. Sam Stagg will make a short introduction. I think this is on, you know.
It sounds on.
Well, I'm speaking through here, so.
I speak well, so.
Okay. Oh, no, but it needs to be captured by the video. Sorry.
Y'all hear me? Is this working? Oh, okay. Oh, terrifying. Hi, my name is Sam Staggs. I'm the speaker for the Student Senate, and I'm here to kind of just talk about how important this resolution is for students. So this has been workshopped for about 1.5 years through the Student Senate and the Academic Affairs Committee. I was chair of that committee last year, and now I'm speaker. So this is important to me just as much as it is the students on that committee and Student Senate. The big thing that we really want with this is we just want to set a foundation for students so they have some type of support system set in stone in the syllabus. I don't think they necessarily care specifically if it says specifically 2 weeks, if it says specifically a week, 2 days. I think they just want some type of communication from professors of acknowledgement that they do know what their expectations are. And so I know just students really think it's important to always have that communication with professors. And I feel as if sometimes those students think that it's not always there, and it being in the syllabus would be a really great way for students to just feel more connected with their professors. And it has been talked about for the past 1.5 years, and as long as I've been in Senate for sure. And I just think this is a really great resolution to continue the communication and the connection between students and professors. Thank you.
Thanks, Sam. I'll read the resolution for the second time. Oh, okay. So this is the proposed revisions to clarify expectations around course grading and communication. All right. Whereas representatives from student government have put forward a request that faculty add language to their syllabi regarding expected timelines for returning graded coursework and guidelines for course communication, such as policies around email usage and response times. And whereas Faculty Senate leadership in consultation with academic affairs and student government have identified a series of proposed policy changes to PS 29, management of courses and classes, and PS 45, courses and curricula, which retain faculty authority over their classes while allowing for increased clarity regarding course expectations. Therefore, be it resolved that the Faculty Senate recommends that the first sentence of the second paragraph of Section 3 General Policy of PS 29, which currently reads, "The course syllabus must specify information to the student about the course, including course objectives, grading policies, topics, textbooks, and reference materials," be revised to read, "The course syllabus must specify information to the student about the course, including course objectives, grading policies, topics, textbooks, and reference materials, anticipated timelines for returning graded coursework, and a course communications policy." Resolved that the Faculty Senate recommends that a footnote be added at the end of the sentence referenced in the preceding paragraph, directing faculty to a website maintained by Academic Affairs, which contains suggested syllabus language, and that a permanent hyperlink be included in the footnote. Resolved that the Faculty Senate recommends that the sample syllabus and syllabus outline be removed from Appendix A of PS 45 to reduce confusion and potential conflict with the syllabus guidelines outlined in PS 29. And so to assuage some concerns, I drafted just something that I might use in my courses for the communications and grading policy. So I teach courses that are mostly 30 to 50 students in either lecture or lab settings. And so obviously your courses would be different, right? But this is what would work for me. So emailing is the best way to contact me, and you can generally expect a response within 1 to 2 business days unless I'm traveling. I try to provide feedback on most assignments within a week, but timelines will likely be longer for large assignments like exams and essays. If there are circumstances that cause significant delays in either communication or grading, I will convey that to the class. I think that's really all they're looking for is a policy like that. So I will open the floor for discussion.
I've heard a lot about this, and I have a major issue with this. This is going to codify for the only people that have to answer emails in a certain time. I send something to facility services. I bring in a lot of money indirect. They don't answer me back. They ghost me. I communicate with administrators. There's no timeline for them. There's no timeline on when students have to get back to us. And I've been ghosted by students once I tell them something. This is a collective punishment for some faculty that are not doing the correct thing, and this is a failure of management. And I'm stunned that this is being collectively used against us. At the moment, the faculty experience at LSU does not seem to be on the radar of anybody. We do not have a newspaper to voice our opinion, which the students do. We do not have communications with the administration do. This is another codification and the loss and putting us into further and further corner. And some people, as I said before, have 800 students. They cannot answer emails at this rate. If it's in the course syllabus, anything that's on the Moodle site in the course syllabus or anything, those emails should be able to be ignored. That is what the students are reading. Number two, I've had students basically ask me to basically write a small paper for them. I've got it back. There's been 1 or 2 typos. They then attack me on the typos. Well, I could basically point to their email and find all sorts of grammatical mistakes. I don't like the fact that we're being asked to codify every single step of our teaching. This is another degradation of us, similar to we must give, what is it, progress reports on students? Where I found out, and I want the faculty senate to review this, they sent back, the student are sent an email where basically the faculty is thrown under the bus, that their faculty has complained and basically brought this as a concern. And then do you want to know who actually contacts a student from the office? A fellow student. So a fellow student is given poor performance information, which I think goes against all sorts of FERPA rules. And that student can be in the same class, and that student can sometimes be asked to talk to the person sitting beside them. So when I look at this, a large amount is being put onto faculty's back with ODS and everything, with no support, degrading us, basically making us do more and more with codification when nobody else is being asked to do this in the university, including the students are not being codified to, you must respond back if your professor has a question for you, back within this length of time. This all came about because some professors were not reporting midterm grades or something. That is a management issue that needs to be addressed by the faculty boss. That means the department chair or the dean. This is to be handled at that stage. I don't like the fact that we're being codified every little thing, basically closer to high school, where we do not have the rights of a high school teacher of confiscating cell phones and other issues that I have a lot of students in my class where they send me an email when I basically do pop quizzes. They're not in my class. They're expecting me to answer them. I don't think I should have to answer if it's covered in class. So I think there needs to be a very, very careful rethinking of this, exactly what this means. Answering tests back, we do a lot of traveling. We have a lot of other committee meeting services. We have major grants due and so forth. Most of us do our best, depending on the size of class and depending on the test. I have some students that took me and I basically had a Scantron because that's such a large class. I can get those back within a week. I have another one where I have long essays. And I talked about this before. I have to translate their writing because their writing's not good enough. That takes a long time. I cannot turn around those in what I usually used to think. I basically made them do it online. The students didn't like that because they had to type it up. So I really think we need to really think about this very carefully. And if we do this, it has to be a university-wide agreement that emails have to be answered in a certain period of time, not only partial. One fraction of the university has to do this and has to be codified.
Thanks for your comments.
So I support the practice of clear communication with students. I think it's good pedagogy and generally considerate of students' needs, but like my colleague, I do oppose this resolution. I worry about the increasing subjection of our profession to bureaucracy, to administration and rules. Formalizing communication expectations in this way at such a high level is, as my colleague said, it's degrading of us as professionals, and it really only empowers administrators. I've watched much of our role as researchers, as educators, become routinized, become formalized, become measured under bureaucratic procedures. And generally, I've seen complacency towards this, and I think that's a problem. I think it's detrimental to our profession, to the calling of being a professor, to create these sorts of impersonal rules and policies that dictate how we should conduct ourselves. And moreover, I think it's destructive of the intrinsic motivations that most have to become academics. I think that encouraging clear communication can be achieved in an indirect, less hierarchical way, primarily at the department level. I agree. Policies like this one proposed, they can have the perverse effect of actually discouraging the actual kind of behaviors that we want to encourage, of sort of a race to the bottom in terms of the policies that are expressed. And the more we convert our pedagogy and our profession to systems and rules, the more likely we're going to find ourselves facing discouraged people who we think only respond to rules and policies. So I encourage everyone to vote against this resolution, but to please act in favor of respecting and communicating with students.
So one thing I want to point out is that, like, right now, this is sort of a choose your own adventure. And I know that students and student government feels really strongly about this. And so right now, the way this resolution reads, you can set your own rules. And what we wouldn't want to happen is for the students to go to the board of supervisors or something, and then the rules get set for us where we don't have a choice. That would be the ultimate bad news. And so if that plays into your decision, I think it should be weighed. I've not received any direct communication from student government.
Is they looked at a lot of the codification that we just talked about. They're not applying. This means we're racing down to the bottom of who will apply. This is not what a university is. As I say, this can be taken care of, and it's a failure of management, not faculty.
And I agree with you that it's perhaps
And that needs to be looked at first.
yeah,
And
that it is a failure of management, but policies like this in Syllabi are reasonably commonplace across peer institutions.
And
So
but as I say, I want this codified then for everybody in campus. If I send something to facility services, they must follow these exact rules. How come we're the only ones in which timelines and this restrictions are being applied to on campus? Nobody else has these rules set on them. So,
So given that if I may, just clearly there's a sentiment where we are in favor of increased communication, but there seems to be some hesitation about whether we want it exactly in this form. I would remind you that it is possible to amend the proposal. And we could certainly entertain a motion to amend the proposal to state that it is recommended that anticipated timelines for returning graded coursework and course communication policy also be included, essentially conveying to faculty that we think that this would be a desirable option or desirable information to include in the syllabus at the faculty member's discretion. So we'd be happy to entertain such a motion or a motion like that if anyone wants.
No, we'll do this.
Thank you. Yeah, so in the position Kevin has highlighted, the motion as moved by Robert Mann is to add the text at the cursor, and it is recommended that, and then the rest of the language would be anticipated timelines for returning graded coursework and a course communications policy, and then we would add the text also be included, consequently including the recommendations, but making these policies optional. And that is currently the motion on the floor. We do need a second. Thank you very much. All right. So the motion on the floor is to add that text to the resolution. And is there discussion on the amendment? Not on the original motion, but on the amendment? Yeah, right.
And the real bone of contention with people I talk to is not so much that, it's the resolve, the next resolve. Resolve that the faculty senate recommends that a footnote be added at the end of the sentence. The problem there is that when this goes to academic affairs, they can change that wording to whatever they want to. And that's just a way for them to eventually worm their way into a dictatorial wording on this policy. I mean, most of the people I talked to said they don't want to see anything from academic affairs giving suggesting language on what needs to be put into a syllabus.
Just, we will return just at the moment because the motion on the floor is pending to the amendment. But there have been faculty who have asked actually that they see examples of suggested language, and they are suggestions. So no faculty member is obligated to include that language as written. You may have to have a statement to that effect. But some faculty have found it helpful to have suggested language approved by academic affairs that they know that if they put that in there, they will meet the requirement under the various policy statements and PMs. So this again, this would not supersede the faculty's ability to construct their own syllabus, but it does give them suggested language. And again, we are going to return to a discussion of the motion on the amendment exclusively at this point in time. So is there further discussion of the amendment?
Yes, rather than using the word recommend, suggest.
Okay, unless there are any objections to the substitution for recommend, we will use suggest instead. All right, hearing no objections, we will substitute suggest for recommend.
It is suggested.
Are there any objections to the proposal to add a hard stop after materials and begin a new sentence with and it is suggested? Hearing no objections, the amendment is made to that portion. Is there a further discussion on the main motion to amend? Thank you. Yeah, it is suggested. Yeah. It's in PDF, unfortunately. Yeah. Can we add a PDF? Okay, yeah, so it now currently reads at the point where the cursor is, there will be a period after materials. Then it is suggested anticipated timelines for returning graded coursework and a course communications policy also be included. Is there any further discussion of the amendments? Hearing no further discussion, we'll proceed to the vote. All those in favor of the amendments? All right, all opposed? All right, we have a number of opposition votes. Yep. Yeah, this is on the amendment. We still will return to discussion of the primary motion after we conclude. So the motion on the floor is to amend the document as the amendment has itself been amended. So all those in favor of amending the document as the amendment has been amended. All right, thank you very much. All those opposed? Any abstentions? All right, thank you. We now return to discussion of the main motion, which is the approval of the resolution as amended.
I'm Pam Blanchard. I'm School of Education. And I'm wondering, as we talk about this, I agree that professor communications needs to happen. I endorse all of that. But what happened to following a chain of command? I mean, if a student has a problem with the professor not communicating, it seems like they could go to the chair, and if the chair doesn't act, then they go up to the dean's level. Of course, you have to trust, I understand, that people are going to keep their mouths shut so that the student isn't exposed to, flashback from the professor. But it seems like the only way the professor is ever going to be exposed for not communicating or not posting grades is if the students have the courage to go to the person right above them and then above that person. I mean, that's what got the education person fired over in our school for foul language. So why not a chain of command? I mean, it seems like this is bypassing a chain of command. I like the language, but I still think people are going to misbehave. Professors are going to misbehave, and no one's going to know about it and be forced to do anything about it. That's my 2 cents.
Yeah, you can submit a report through LSU Cares. There's a drop-down menu that you can, but you have to know that it's there and you have to be willing to use it. And that's a pervasive problem among students. Yes.
Okay. Scott Baldridge in math. And I'd like to offer I guess a friendly amendment, which is, can you go to the next page? So Kevin, I really appreciate you trying. No, it's a hard thing to do, but can we remove this? Can we just not have a appendix example syllabus statement? So in other words, we just let everybody decide how they want to do it themselves. And the reason why is I don't want to, how I would interact with my students in a math class, it could be very, very, very different from a biology lab. And I just don't want to even have to suggest that this is the language that you should use.
Sure. Delighted to.
Second? That's my friendly amendment. Thank you, Kevin.
Okay,
for trying.
so that needs to be sort of a formal motion to amend.
Formal motion to amend
And
the
remove the
removal of the
appendix.
appendix.
Any discussion? He's got it.
The language on the academic affairs website. If we're going to move this, let's remove that paragraph too, and have no language on the academic affairs website. I move that.
We have the first motion on the floor with a second, so we need to deal with that first.
Well.
Okay,
would you
parliamentarians
accept that
taking
as a
over
friendly
again.
Amendment to your motion?
There is once again a motion to amend the amendment. So the current motion is to amend the proposed amendment to strike the second resolved clause. So right now, is there any discussion on the amendment to strike the second resolved clause? Are there any objections to the inclusion of this or to the execution of this motion? Okay, yep, so there is an objection. Is this a motion to divide the question? All right. There is a motion to divide the question on the floor. Motions to divide the question are not, I believe, let me grab my Robert's Rules cheat sheet. Well, it's the cheat sheet. This is about 5% or maybe 1%. Oh, teaching? Yeah, at some point I will be able to teach this. So, so there is a motion to divide the question. This does require a second. It is not debatable. It is amendable. Would anyone like to amend the motion to divide the question, or is there any discussion? All right. All those in favor of dividing the question into the First Amendment and the Second Amendment, please say aye. All right. Any opposed? All right. We have 2 opponents to the process to amend the amendment, or divide the question of the amendment. Okay, so the motion has been divided. We will take up Dr. Baldridge's amendment first, and then we will proceed with Dr. Dooley's amendment. So the current amendment under consideration is to strike the appendix on the resolution. Is there any further discussion on this amendment?
John Bardis History. I would actually respectfully voice my support for that language, because it's very clear that it's purely intended as a suggestion, is completely non-binding, and is purely intended to make it easier for instructors to craft their own language. There's nothing in it that implies anything punitive for not adapting that language, or nothing in there that would not encourage a professor to change that language for their own purposes. So I actually like the appendix, but I recognize I might be in the minority in that.
Well, thank you very much. Is there any further discussion on the First Amendment to remove the appendix to the resolution?
I also like the appendix, because for people creating their own syllabi, every time you have to create a new course, it's kind of nice to have an example. It's just a template. I don't interpret it as prescriptive at all.
Thank you. And there's a comment over there.
If we can actually go back to the sentence we're discussing, or the paragraph we're discussing.
Oh, sure.
I would like to basically have within X to X business days and within X weeks. I don't want to see numbers in this, because this is a very slippery slope to where somebody's going to, I know we've had this when I first joined Faculty Senate, a suggestion that we had to answer emails within 24 hours. And there was no thought about what happens when a student sends it to at the start of the Mardi Gras break, and then we forget about it. I mean, you know, we basically get hundreds of emails a day, right? So I would like to basically see not specific numbers, but X to X business days and X weeks, and basically plural in brackets. So that gives people the flexibility, not thinking, okay, I have to write this, because this is basically it will be a subliminary message. This is what's expected.
So
and academic affairs will go in and basically go, well, you've written it, you put in your document.
Sure.
In other words, you voted that this was okay, even though it was a suggestion. This means that this is a majority, so we're going to go with this. This is something that's a very slippery slope, I believe.
Sure. Well, the current motion under consideration is to strike this paragraph altogether. So it is possible to add a motion to substitute the amendment by amending it to retain the paragraph and substitute that language, but that would itself need to be a motion to amend the amendment. Okay. There is a seconded motion to retain the appendix and change the dates to, I'm sorry, XXX instead of days and weeks. Okay. Okay. Madam Secretary, that recorded. You think you're dying here.
Dan, I'm sorry, like I have lost the track of which motion is which, but
Sure.
maybe let me try to give a middle ground. Why don't we add a couple of more examples in this appendix
What?
coming from the senators, and maybe also take the recommendation of Professor Dooley, because anything referring to the footnote on a website which we do not control is slightly off our limits.
Sure. So amendments are not, unfortunately for us, infinite. So we can only consider an amendment of amendment. We cannot do an amendment of an amendment of an amendment. So currently, we can only consider the amendment to the amendment, which is to retain the paragraph here and substitute that language. Once we have passed that, we can then amend further if you would like to. But currently, the motion on the floor is to retain the appendix and substitute X's and parentheses for dates as stated in the appendix. Is there any further discussion of the amendment to the amendment? All right, all those in favor of the amendment to the amendment, please say aye. All right, all those opposed? Yeah. Certainly. No, we have substituted for the motion to delete the amendment. The motion to delete the amendment was itself amended and replaced with a motion to retain the amendment but change the language. So, which we have not yet voted on. So we haven't voted on that motion. We have voted to amend the amendment to keep. So now the motion under consideration, once we've recorded the noes, assuming the motion passes, the next vote will be to whether we want to keep the appendix with the language changes. That will be the motion that we will proceed to next. Correct. Well, it will be to retain it, but essentially change the language. We are not considering whether to strike the appendix at this point. That has been superseded through the Second Amendment. Was that? We did vote on that. Yeah. Well, that's what we're voting on now. No. What we're voting on now is whether we are replacing the amendment to strike the appendix with the subsequent amendment that was offered, which in fact substituted for the original amendment. Which one? No, we did that by substituting for that motion. Yeah. No, with the second amendment, right? So Dr. Cook offered the amendment, right? Right. If we vote no on the amendment, and the amendment is to the amendment. So the original motion is to adopt this. The first amendment is to strike this altogether. The proposed amendment to the amendment is in fact to keep this, but change the language to substitute X's for the dates. If we amend the amendment, that we have essentially substituted the Second Amendment for the First Amendment, that will then be the next piece of business upon which we will vote. And then we will go to the second motion to amend, which will be on the second resolve clause. That's where we are currently. No, I agree. Yes, if you want to remove the appendix, vote no on the Second Amendment to retain it, but substitute different language. Sure. Are there any objections to the motion to withdraw? Hearing no objections, we shall proceed. So now the motion under consideration is to amend the resolution by striking the appendix altogether. Is there any further discussion on this? Yeah, and has to go back and delete the Zoom. All right. So now the motion under consideration is whether to amend the resolution by striking the appendix. Is there any further discussion on this motion?
You know, I hope everybody understands. I do appreciate what you did, Kevin, by trying to do this. I just want to make it something that's department by department.
Sure. So is there any further discussion on the motion to amend? Okay. Well, if we call the question now, it is on the motion to amend. So on the motion to amend, all those in favor, this could be there being no further discussion. All those in favor of the amendment to strike the appendix. All right. All those opposed? recorded, everyone? Are there any abstentions to the motion? Okay, the motion carries. The appendix has been struck and the resolution has been amended. Consequently, now we return to the second motion to amend, which was the motion to remove the second resolve clause. If we can scroll up. So the motion currently under consideration is to remove the second resolve clause. Is there discussion on this motion? It was seconded, correct? Okay. So the motion currently under consideration is to further amend the resolution by striking the resolve clause that says resolved that the faculty senate recommends that a footnote be added at the end of the sentence referenced in the preceding paragraph. So that entire paragraph would be struck if the motion carries. Yeah, this one right here. Yeah. Is there any further discussion of this motion? All those in favor of the motion to amend the resolution by striking this resolve clause, please say aye. Any opposed? Okay. Any abstentions? All right. So we have now disposed of all the motions to amend, and we are back to consider the main motion, which is the adoption of the resolution as amended. Is there any further discussion of the motion to adopt the resolution as amended?
So Adriano Vasa from veterinary medicine. I just want to bring us back to perhaps the original purpose of this whole resolution, which was, I believe, complaints from the students that we were not responding to their questions. And I've heard that my colleagues at the vet school have been tardy in giving out results. And I know that affects the students' ability to study for subsequent exams because they don't know what they need to put their focus on to pass the next exam or to do better in the next exam. And I also think that it's just common courtesy to answer students' questions within a reasonable period of time. And we are faculty and we should set the example. And I think that we've been distracted perhaps by some students who, are perhaps over demanding in their responses, requiring immediate responses at 10 o'clock on a Saturday night or something. But overall, I think it's a very reasonable request for students to ask us to be accountable to them. That's our job. So no motion, just comment.
Thank you. Any further discussion?
On that comment, I agree. It is our job. Most of the take is very seriously. I don't want it to be codified, to be used, and codification means weaponization. You don't do this, then you can get punished for performance. You may have COVID. You may have quite a sickness. The student complains, you have to go through all of this because you did not hit your 2-day limit. I don't think this should be codified. If a student has a complaint, they should see your department chair, and the department chair should come heavily down on those faculty members, including giving them an unsatisfactory annual review if they do this. This is, as was said, a chain of command. If the student has a problem, they should send you an email or come and see you during office hours or after class going, did you see my email? If they don't get a response, they go to the department chair. If the department chair cannot resolve it, it goes to the dean, and that can be under normal disciplinary actions. We have all the rules for this. And as I say, it's just a failure of leadership.
I move the previous question.
So noted. Is there a second? All right. The motion to move the question is not debatable and not amendable. Thank God. So we shall proceed immediately to the vote. The motion under consideration is to adopt the resolution as amended. All those in favor of adopting the resolution as amended, please say aye. All those opposed? I mean, I don't even know that it needs to be as resolved at this point. But I mean, certainly we would be happy on the FSAC to include that in the broadcast email, just as general good practice that, right, we would recommend that faculty please provide, respond to students in a timely manner, return graded, and set expectations about the return timelines for graded coursework. So, do you mind if we make a note of that? All right. Sure. Yeah. Yeah. Are there any abstentions to the motion to adopt the resolution? Okay. Are we good? All right, the ayes have it. The motion carries. The resolution has been adopted as amended. Thank you.
Okay, we now move on to new business, and it concerns proposals from Policy Committee, and they will be presented by John Snow, who's the chair of the Policy Committee, and he will introduce all the items here.
Hello, everybody. I'm John Snow, and chair of the Policy Committee. I'm a little nervous standing up in front of you because it's the first time that I have addressed this body, and I'm a little nervous. So you're probably wondering, why is John Snow on the Faculty Senate Policy Committee? I'm not even a faculty senator, although today I am representing my department. Senator who could not be here. And the reason that I was asked to be on the Policy Committee, and apparently I'm now its chair, is because of my prior experience, my previous university, where I was Faculty Senate President and chair of the Faculty Governance Committee, member of the Faculty Governance Committee for 5 years, and I also chaired the University Coordinating Committee, which is probably where Inessa's recommendation about a procedure for policy statements and permanent memoranda is headed. Okay, and so that's how we ended up at this place. So now I'm chairing the Faculty Senate Policy Committee. It was created in November last year. My colleagues on the committee, which are up on the screen, Dan, Allison, Hannah, and Jeffrey, we've had a lot of discussion about shared governance and goals of shared governance. Our charge was to review documents outlining policies governing Senate operations and those of our committees, making recommendations for improvements. We held 7 meetings and about a half a zillion off agenda and off-campus discussions of various kinds. And we reported out in January to FSAC about our goals and what we were trying to do with the implementation. Okay, so what we're doing is basically pursuant to 2 main statements in the SAC's Principles of Accreditation that say regarding shared governance that faculty is responsible for certain things. And second, in the Senate Constitution, that I'm sorry, it looks like a PowerPoint fail that it's overlapping there. But the faculty that the Senate shall represent the Faculty Council in all matters. And so it's really important, these 2 statements together, that the Senate recall that it is the primary organ of shared governance at the university, and that we're the only body that represents all faculty. And it's an important responsibility. There are areas of primary faculty responsibility that should be done in at least very close alliance with the Faculty Senate or be part of the Faculty Senate, as for example, courses and curricula already is. But so, those are sweeping statements, right? But the goals we set ourselves in the near term are to improve lines of communication within the Senate, to strengthen the Senate and Council as the leading faculty shared governance at LSU, and to improve lines of communication with non-Senate faculty shared governance as it currently exists. Okay, and fourth, there's a lot of cleaning up of our constitutive documents, including the Senate Constitution and the bylaws that still need to be done following on work that's been done over the past many years to tend the garden, as I call it. Okay, so this is just a quick overview. We've got 4 things that we basically did. We have bylaws, red lines. We have a resolution on our representation at the Council of Faculty Advisors. Oh yeah, I was chair of that, equivalent in my university system too. And we have a couple of committee recommendations, and we also have red lines for the Constitution to present to the Faculty Council when the time is right, which is hopefully this year. Okay, so the bylaws changes we could do very quickly simply because we're not going to discuss them or debate them today. They're sent to everybody as red lines. We've gotten several sets of comments on them. You guys have a month to tear it apart and for discussion next time. I listed a couple of the substantive things that we fixed, but they're not really big. Most of it is really cleaning up cruft and things that have become redundant or not used anymore. And so we'll talk about that all next time. All right. So we have the COFA resolution. Do we have a separate document on that? Because I didn't put it in my. Okay, good. Okay, good.
As you recall from our discussions in the beginning of the fall semester, under Permanent Memorandum 24, we should have a policy for election of our representative and alternate representative to the Council of Faculty Advisors, and we do not currently have one. And so the Policy Committee undertook an effort to create a resolution that would define a set of policies for us for these elections. And on behalf of the Policy Committee, I therefore move that we adopt the following resolution. LSU A&M Faculty Senate Resolution 2303, procedures to elect LSU A&M representatives to the Council of Faculty Advisors. Whereas Permanent Memorandum 24 requires each member campus of the Council of Faculty Advisors to elect a representative and alternate according to procedures established by that campus's faculty senate or other governing body. Whereas LSU A&M is a member of the Council of Faculty Advisors, but has no established policy for electing representatives to that body. And whereas, according to the Faculty Senate rules, the Faculty Senate President is the official representative from the Senate to all external bodies, and the Vice President serves in that capacity when the President is unavailable or unable to do so. Oh, sure. Therefore, be it resolved that the election for President and Vice President of the Faculty Senate shall serve as the election for the Council of Faculty Advisors, representative and alternate respectively, when these positions are due to be elected. Resolved that it is expected that when the Senate President or Vice President leave their office for any reason prior to the conclusion of their term on the Council of Faculty Advisors, they will resign from their positions on the Council, and that their Senate successor shall also serve the remainder of their Council term. Resolved that Permanent Memorandum 24 is at any point revised to allow for the term duration of the Council of Faculty Advisors representatives to be harmonized with those of the President and Vice President of the Faculty Senate, then the length of the Council term shall automatically be adjusted to match that of the corresponding Senate offices. As this is sponsored by a committee, it does not require a second, and we will proceed immediately to discussion. Discussion on the motion to adopt the resolution. Yes. We don't have one. Practice was customarily that the Faculty Senate President would serve in this capacity, and we historically have not had an alternate in most years. This year, given some changes in Faculty Senate leadership and the fact that there is an incompatibility between the term length of the Council of Faculty Advisors, which is 2 years, and the term length of the Faculty President, which is 1 year, we ended up having a difference in who represented us at each body. So currently this is trying to fill in that void of replacing custom with something that is institutionalized in the form of a formal practice.
Saying expected really has no hold for anything. It doesn't make someone resign from a position, and you can't supersede whatever permanent memorandum 24 says, that if somebody's elected an officer of that organization and they serve 2 years, they must serve out their term.
It is true that expected is not a commitment. We cannot require someone to resign from the Council of Faculty Advisors as a superior document to Faculty Senate resolutions. However, I think it is fair, given the principle embodied in this resolution, that the Faculty Senate President should be our representative to the Council of Faculty Advisors. I think it is consistent with the sentiment for the Senate to express that we expect someone in that position to resign at the time that their service on the Senate ends. It will be at the discretion of that individual. We cannot force them to do that, but certainly I think the principle would suggest that the Senate would not be out of line to have that expectation. Is there any further discussion? Yes, Dr. Bassini.
Given the upcoming elections in April, I moved to have a vote on this at this meeting without the need for a second reading.
Okay, is there a second to the motion to remove the requirement for a second reading in this resolution? Okay, we have a second. All right, is there any discussion? All right, we shall proceed to the vote on the motion to remove the requirement for a second reading of this resolution. All those in favor of removing the second reading requirement, please say aye. All right, all those opposed? Any abstentions? Oh, is that an opposition or abstention? Okay, opposed, Dr. King. Opposed. Any abstentions? Okay, we will now go back to the discussion. All right, yeah, so the discussion of the original motion, which is the adoption of the resolution. Is there any further discussion of the original motion for the adoption of the resolution? Hearing no further discussion, we shall proceed to the vote on the motion to adopt the resolution. All those in favor of the adoption of the resolution, please say aye. Any opposed? Okay, Dr. King. Any abstentions? The motion carries. The resolution has been adopted. Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much, Dan. Let me see, let's move back to the. Okay. All right, so just a couple of more points. So the committee has a couple of recommendations to make that will be discussed extensively in the committee about pertaining to implementing our goals of that I listed earlier. And the first of those is that the policy committee recommends that a formal process be created for the creation, revision, and approval of policy statements and permanent memoranda that's consistent with the principles and practices of shared governance. And so notice that we're not demanding that everything be passed through the Faculty Senate, but that a process be created that hopefully will involve the Faculty Senate. And we're hoping that the Senate will adopt this idea and carry it forward. A second recommendation is that we recognize that the SACS and LSU Board of Supervisors recognize areas of primary faculty responsibility that are the purview of the primarily the Faculty Council and Senate. And so we recommend that shared governance committees similarly concerned with areas of primary faculty responsibility should also be Senate bodies. And so this is not a binding resolution on anybody, but is intended to commence a process that will move areas of primary faculty responsibility closer to this body and include their leadership in the inner circle of communication with the Senate leadership. All right.
I have a question, comment.
Question, comment, sure.
Yeah. I was wondering if Dr. Cassidy could explain how she obtains faculty input and how she comes to the faculty senate when there's changes in policies.
So Dr. Cassidy, I'm interested in that topic myself.
So Joan, if I'm understanding your question correctly, if there is a change in policy that is the academic policies, there's a lot of policies that we don't even deal with in academic affairs. So we usually go and work with the Faculty Senate Executive Committee. We've worked with Vanessa and Dan on a number of things here, and I guess this is the first time we've had a policy committee that that we would work with, but I would think that we would continue to bring it to the policy committee now. Does that answer your question, Joan, or you want more specific than that? Oh, yeah. When there's a major policy revision, right, we usually come and present it to the Faculty Senate. You're right about that. So.
So let me offer my specific experience on this exact matter. My former university had a specific committee that was devoted only to that purpose. It contained the Faculty Senate Executive Committee, but it also contained a representative from the Dean's Council, student government, as an ex officio, not always member, who didn't always show up, but also staff council. So many stakeholders in the university that would be affected by policies that come down. And that committee, although it was not an organ of the Faculty Senate, was a very useful committee to the university. What it did was take in all new policies and then had a list of all of the stakeholders with their a vast list of stakeholders that was maintained by the Senate staff person. And they would put new policies and permanent memoranda out to the stakeholders that it affected. And that was the job of the committee, is to decide whose ox is gored by this new policy. And we knew everybody, and that was the point. So it's difficult for just the executive committee to do that. And so that might be a model. I don't know. LSU doesn't have to be like my old university. This was the pet project of the 5 times previous Senate president to me there. And my understanding is that it worked out really, really well, except that I still occasionally get emails from them about new policies, and I have to tell them, actually, I can't respond to this because I'm not faculty anymore at that university. But it was, so they took the policies in, sent them out, and had a central website where people could register their comments. And all of that went back to the subject matter experts. And sometimes the subject matter experts learned something that they didn't know before. And so we called that committee it was called the UCC. We called it the Unintended Consequences Committee, in which it did a pretty good job, not perfect, but pretty good job of defending against unintended consequences, both for faculty and administration. That's so I see a question.
Yes. So the policy statements apply to our campus, but the permanent memoranda are system-wide. So to create a policy committee for our Senate will require a change in the bylaws, but that I would assume would be specific to the policy statements, not the memoranda. So what are so should they both be included there?
So I don't know. I think that would be a matter for debate. And I think what could happen is that those things could pass whatever committee this becomes and be advanced to the system level. But which is, I think, what our procedure was. I'm getting a little hazy because it was a couple of years ago. But because we also had combined leadership, the way president and chancellor combined in one office. And so the subject matter experts were typically, that were originating the policies, were typically the ones on the main campus.
So my point is that I think the language pertaining to policy statements is reasonable and makes sense for our local campus, but the permanent memoranda will involve 7 other campuses.
Mhm.
And so I don't think, it doesn't seem feasible or correct to include that in a committee described in our bylaws.
Could be. Yeah, I mean, so, and I think probably the next step in the chain for a PM would certainly be, would be at the system level. But, in any event, this is we have another comment, John.
I was just wondering if you could give examples of what committees you're talking about in the second paragraph.
Oh, sure. So for example, already inside the Senate, we have the Courses and Curriculum Committee, because that is a named absolute function of faculty, and is quite rightly contained. It is a Senate committee. And so we're not that, how should I say, what's the relativized adjective that, for agnostic? We're not super committed to any particular committee, although certainly there are some that have been mentioned with core faculty responsibilities. And we started talking to folks like the Council on Research and the Graduate Council. And those are, and there are others. I always say the 4 horsemen of the Senate are workload, evaluation, compensation, and parking. So I'm not sure if the parking committee really, but I would say that's a matter of debate and not necessarily something we need to set in stone right now. It's a matter of deciding what are those core areas. There's an area of shared governance, the IT governance committee, that used to be sort of a side topic, like, are we going to use Canvas or Blackboard? But now, are we going to use Canvas or Blackboard is a really important topic for how faculty do their jobs. And so the question of who to approach, who to incorporate, and who to bring under the umbrella, it's, that's all part of the whole debate. Those are the main ones that I can think about, but we're happy to entertain nominations of who we should be talking to.
I'm all for,
In the back.
yeah, I'm all for transparency. But the Faculty Senate is a public body where I think a large amount of us have been rather stunned at just what that requires. If we have any meeting, we must post an agenda outside. It basically goes against a large amount of what normal university running is. And I don't think that was ever what was really intended when the Faculty Senate was set up. I think that's been how should I put it, a go around or circumnavigation around some of what faculty need to do. So I'm just wondering, when you're discussing this, I don't think, does that apply to Faculty Council? I don't think so. Faculty Council is not an elected body, correct? So we may want to sort of start dividing some of the responsibilities up, where basically Faculty Council approaches some of the more contentious things, gets, why don't we say, the bloodletting in the room done, where people can really express themselves and everything, that's not on public display per se. Then their conclusions and so forth will be brought to the Faculty Senate, where then that would be for public consumption, because sometimes we need to talk about some things that, let's be honest, should not be in the public purview for what we need to do our jobs.
I will defer to Dan on that topic.
Sorry, the Faculty Council is a public body, because the status of determination of whether it's a public body or not is not whether it's elected, but what the interpretation of the General Counsel's office, as I understand it, is that because the Faculty Council has a delegated authority over curriculum from the Board of Supervisors, we are understood to be an advisory committee to the Board of Supervisors, and everything that cascades then from the Faculty Council is itself a public body. So the elected, not elected is not the defining characteristic. It's whether you have the delegated authority of the board, where we are interpreting public body versus not public body. But the Faculty Council is a public body, which is the reason all the other ones are determined to be such.
So I'd say that the Louisiana Open Meetings Law is what it is. And I'm not going to say this I got to be careful what I say on the open record of the Faculty Senate, but I think there may be bodies that don't realize that they too are governed by Louisiana Open Meeting Law. And so I'm not proposing, or we're not proposing this as a way to get around Louisiana Open Meeting Law. We simply have to follow that. We've got no choice in the matter. And we have to make do in shared governance with what we got. And this is what we got. So any other discussion on these points? Yes.
Yes. Ed Shada, Sociology, Criminology. Thank you, John, for the work you do and your committee for the hard work that you do on issues of faculty governance. And I mean, I strongly support this. I strongly support anything that helps us reclaim the power that we've lost over the last several decades. I agree with it. It's pretty general at this point, which is perfectly fine. There are no specifics. Given what happened an hour ago, I don't think we're going to get anything specific here before the end of the week. So I agree with it in principle. So I guess I move that we empower the FSEC. We empower FSEC to begin the conversation and first identifying which shared governance committees fall under this with our suggestions and begin conversations with the relevant bodies, with academic affairs and grad school and whoever else we can think of, and IT and the rest of them, to really pin this down specifically on what it's going to look like, because this is really a very important thing to get right. So anyway, that's the general motion.
We have a second. Okay, do we have a discussion on the motion to please proceed with these things? That's what if I got that correct. Hearing none, we can move to a vote on the motion being considered. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye. All those opposed? All those abstaining? In that case, I will note that by acclamation, we have a motion to please go right ahead and do that stuff. Okay, our last item on the agenda, on our sub-agenda, is Constitution, and we have Hannah to present the Constitution red lines.
All right.
Hannah, take the vote.
Oh, I hope I didn't turn that. Okay, there we go. I nailed it. I always have a hard time with microphones. They're the worst. Okay. So I was on the committee and helped with these, but I did not do most of the work. I'm not gonna lie. So these changes we made were based on the 2020 changes, with special thanks to Ken McMillan and special thanks to Jeff Rowland. He did a lot of the red lines here with some really complicated program that I don't understand. And it's mostly cleanups and clarifications. What was it? Tech, I don't know. I use Word. So the first thing, so this is a little bit of an error. It's in section 5.9, not section 4.9. We added just Robert's Rules clause. We added the opportunity to use virtual meetings if they become allowed by Louisiana law. Currently, they're not. We deleted an unused advisory committee, section 6.6. And the opportunity to add electronic voting if it becomes allowed by law, because it currently is not. So I think one of the things that we wanted to talk about a little bit was that we wanted to try to get this to the faculty council if there are enough people. So I would like to make a motion on the behalf of the policy committee that we move to adopt the proposed revisions of the Faculty Senate Constitution and forward them for the consideration of the faculty council. So now, do we have a second? Second. And then we enter discussion.
Discussion?
Joan. It usually is, yeah.
I had mentioned this to John and Daniel, I believe, that starting with the 2020 changes is not appropriate because you have to start with the Constitution that was last approved by the Faculty Council,
Well,
which is what I would have to look up because I know which one that is.
I think, so the 2005 changes, we used the 2005 changes to create the 2020 changes that were voted on by the Senate. And then it just didn't make it through the council because there wasn't a quorum, which might be the case this time. I hope not. Bring all the folks out to the council meeting so we make quorum. But so you could go back to 2005 and see the changes from there, but it was already voted on by the Senate.
But that one that was done in 2020 was not based off of the last approved Faculty Council Constitution. It was a later one.
So in the committee, we wanted to be respectful of the changes that were adopted by the Senate in 2020. And so we think of this as a replacement of the Constitution, not as an amendment of the Constitution. So essentially, we would substitute for the 2005 Constitution with the Constitution as presented here, and that is what we would present to the Faculty Council.
Roy? Oh, he's waiting on the mic. Oh, Mandy. Mandy's up.
So I think it's important, however, to share with the council the Constitution that's currently active, right, which is the 2005. So that they can, because I mean, based on what I've learned, people like to compare things side by side. And so I understand this is a revision of a revision, and I respect that, but I think you still have to share what you've amended, right?
Okay, so evidently it's on the Faculty Senate website, the 2005, and we can create a redlined version of that in comparison, if that would make you more confident. Okay.
Your red lines, which I'm sure are perfect, I'm not saying anything, just in case, devil in details, basically just so they can do that comparison themselves, so, okay, yeah, I have full confidence. I think that would be a good way of doing it for the full transparency, and doesn't go, wait a minute, everything can go, look, you have the opportunity to do this, and it didn't go through, that would be, I agree with Andy,
Sure, I feel like the committee would be fine with that. It seems like less work than having to create a red line from the 2005, so. Okay, thank you for the friendly amendment. Other comments or questions? Ed Shahada.
Just a minor procedural question. So you're hoping, if this if we pass this today, it's going to be voted on at the Faculty Council meeting. If the Faculty Council meeting does not make quorum, then we can't. How does this work? Just a technical question.
So if it will essentially become another piece of pending business for the Faculty Council, the 2005 Constitution, which is currently in force, will remain in force. And this would be the most updated version of a proposed set of revisions passed by the Faculty Senate, which could then come up at the next Faculty Council meeting for consideration, or could then be the basis of further amendments. But if the Faculty Council fails to make quorum and we cannot conduct business, the 2005 version would continue as the standard.
But I would like to say that we spent a lot of time talking about it. So if you can bring enough people to the meeting so that we can vote on it, that'd be so great.
Oops. Huh? The motion is an approval of proposed revisions to the Faculty Senate Constitution to be considered by the Faculty Council. Can we proceed to a vote? Okay, all those in favor, please say aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, the motion passes. Just to amplify what Hannah just said, please bring all your colleagues and friends and relatives to the Faculty Council meeting, okay? And your children.
Thanks, everybody, and that concludes the policy committee report.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Just want to thank for all the guests who have been very patiently waiting. So thank you so much. Our next item of business are presentations, and I'd like to invite Theda Daniels-Reyes, who's the head of the Open Education Resource and Affordable Educational Resource Committee, who will make the presentation to the Faculty Senate.
Vertically challenged.
Oh, no. Dan, can you lower this?
Sure. Hey, good afternoon, and thank you all for having us here today. As was mentioned, I'm Theda Daniels-Reyes. I'm a professor of electrical and computer engineering, likewise a provost fellow this year. And I will also say a former faculty senator relatively recently, and an LSU parent twice over. And the reason I say those two things as we come to talk to you today about open educational resources and affordable educational resources is that, well, some faces I recognize, those who know me know that if this in any way, if this did not support our academic freedom, our academic flexibility, and our pedagogy, if this supports those things, I should say, that's a thumbs up for me. If this is something that would support our students' pocketbooks and bringing the cost down in a way that still maintains the quality of education, that's a thumbs up for me as well. And if those criteria had not been met, I would not be here. But more importantly, those of my colleagues from the committee will explain to you the details of this, which I think represent an opportunity for us as opposed to an additional burden or any other problem. Nevertheless, let me turn it over to first Mr. David Dunaway.
Hi, my name is David Dunaway. I'm the Director of Open Scholarship and Affordable Learning. For LSU libraries. And I'm going to talk to you very briefly about OER and AER course labeling. Act 125/SB 117 is a bill signed into law in June 2019 requiring transparency in textbook pricing for students. Louisiana's public colleges and universities are required to label courses that exclusively utilize AER or OER course materials. And for those of you that may not be familiar, let me give a definition. For a course to be designated as OER, all required curricular resources, including textbooks and other instructional materials, such as workbooks, lab manuals, online homework platforms, must be openly licensed. To be designated as AER, all required curricular resources for a course must have a pre-sales tax cost not to exceed an amount equal to 4 times the federal minimum wage, which sadly is $29 at this time. Library ebooks are considered AER materials. The library has had a e-textbook program in place since 2014, and we provide support. We have a database built for faculty, over 400,000 titles in it that are ebooks that we either already own or can purchase with a correct license for use in courses for you to use if you're looking to find materials for your courses. And we also provide consultations to help with finding OER and AER for your courses.
Hi, my name is Elise Santiago, and I'm here representing the Office of the University Registrar. And so now that you're familiar with some of the definitions, I'd like to give you what our problem is and why we're here and the solution. And so these are our current numbers for courses listed under AER and OER for the fall. We only have 1.68% of courses for the fall currently listed with these codes. And so you can see it's 109 out of 6,478. And this is the breakdown by college and then department of the courses that are utilizing these codes. And so if yours isn't up there, then maybe this is something you want to pay attention to. And so these numbers are on a university level, but when we look at this on a state level, this program has impacted, over 300,000 students and saved students $31.2 million. And when we look at this on LSU's impact, it's very small. And so out of that 31.2 million, we are only 745.2 thousand, and over 300,000 students were impacted. Out of those, only 8,730 were LSU students. And so in that box chart, LSU is the very small orange square, and you can see that even though we are the flagship institution of the state, there are many other institutions who are outnumbering us in this program. And you can barely see in the pie chart the highlighted parts which designate LSU's contribution to this program. And so that's our problem and why we need to get these numbers up. And so this is our solution. And so you need to label these courses. And at no point do we want to convey that this is an obligation that you need to do this. And so if your course is already meeting this, then you just want to add the code on there. This is why you would want to pay attention. And so if you're already submitting any course information to your department schedulers, that would need to be done pre-lockout. And lockout is when your department schedulers no longer have access to the screen where they can update courses. And so before the lockout happens, you can report these OER, AER codes to your department schedulers. Scheduling refers to when students schedule for their courses. And so on our scheduling timeline, if you are not able to get these codes to your department schedulers, then you or your department scheduler can submit a form to our team and we can make the update for you. And I'll later in the presentation show you how to do that. So why is it important to get these codes on your course before scheduling? All course information entered into mainframe by your department scheduler or by our team reflects in the course offerings, which is where students go to see what courses are being offered for the following term. And so while entering these codes at any point in our scheduling timeline that you can see at the top is beneficial, entering these codes before scheduling allows students to make the most informed financial decisions when choosing what courses to take for the following term. And so if you don't want to go to your department scheduler and you just want to handle this yourself, you are more than welcome to do this. And so you can go to the University Registrar website, and under faculty and staff services, there's highlighted up there is the after lockout course offering change, and it'll prompt you to the form that you see on your right. And you can fill out all the appropriate information, and you would want to select the type of change as the special enrollment code. And you can tell us if it's AER, OER, and we will go ahead and make that change for you. It's very, very seamless process. So once the code is on the course, whether you submitted it or your department scheduler put it there, this will reflect in the course offering under the special enrollment column. And that's where students will be able to identify what courses are open or affordable educational. And the way that if they don't know what this means, our committee has added a tab to the course offering highlighted in green that says open and affordable educational resources. And once the student clicks on that, it'll prompt them to this LSU Libraries website that defines both of these codes. That's it.
Hi, I'm Sherry Franks Johnson. I'm a professor in the history department. And just my role here is to, I guess, sum the whole thing up. I'm a committee member. And so what we're asking, why we're here at the Senate is we want the help of the senators to, for instance, anticipate concerns. We know that faculty will have concerns. We're aware that there is a very legitimate sense that there is more and more being asked of us. What we want to communicate is this is an option and opportunity for faculty. Many of us are already concerned about costs for students. We may already be doing these sorts of things. I mean, I am teaching a class this semester that could be considered an affordable educational resource course. I didn't know how to label it. And so if we want to be able to, if we are concerned about this, if we are thinking about student courses where there's an opportunity to offer it at an affordable cost, this is a way that we can, that the faculty can know how they can communicate to students. So we know that we need to let faculty know how to do it in such a way that they don't think of this as yet another mandate, but that these resources that we're talking about exist. We also know that different departments, different areas of research are going to have different problems with this. There are some fields where there is just not available. There's not the availability of affordable resources. If your textbook and the one that is best for you to use is $100 or $200, that is what it is. If that's what fits your pedagogy, that is what you use. So it's not a mandate. We also want to problem solve about communication. How do we communicate to faculty that these resources exist, that it is possible to list your course as open or affordable educational resources? And how do we also communicate with staff and students, advising staff who are involved in loading courses into the schedule? How do we communicate this to the relevant parties in the university? Thank you.
Thank you so much for your presentation. Are there any questions? Yes.
If textbooks are provided to the students for free by, let's say, industry sponsorship or otherwise, and that's very typical, especially in engineering, would this qualify for that?
Probably qualify as AER if you can assure that all students in your course have access to those free materials. Yeah, well, that would be considered an AER course.
Yes, in the back. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Jen. Sorry.
Gerald Baumgarten, computer science. I've been teaching courses where the textbooks were available as ebooks through the library. I just didn't know about this designation. So now I learned about it being a senator, but most other faculty don't. So it would be helpful if for any ebooks, if the library could suggest that to the professor requesting the ebook, hey, you might want to add this designation.
Thank you. Yes, I run the e-textbook program. So when I inform faculty that they have an e-textbook available, which I usually do about a week before the semester starts, I can add some language to let them know that that's accessible for them and how to do it.
So I've actually used the e-textbook. I do the environmental chemistry, and I then try tracking how students use it. And because it's a free resource, sometimes I find they use it less. I don't understand why. I guess they feel they don't have an investment in or something, but they're going, well, your notes don't say it. It's like you have a link to the book at the library. So I agree with this. And as you said, some fields such as chemistry, we have something called Mastering in Chemistry, which we use a large amount, and then they get an ebook. But part of that means that we basically have a whole series of metrics that we can measure students' performances and everything. And because it's across the nation, we can then basically benchmark our students against other schools just to make sure everything's working out well. And this is, I'd probably say hundreds of thousands of students being benchmarked if you want. And it does help some people go, okay, in this subject, Louisiana students do very well. And I think everybody knows what I'm talking about. Other subjects sometimes, especially if it's extremely mathematically oriented, sometimes our students do lower. That then gives me the ability then go, okay, in class, that's what I really need to focus on. And I have not seen some of these, I've not seen an open-ended one that gives me that flexibility to really enhance their subject. And for us, I think it's around $70 for the textbook and that homework and everything. So I'm wondering how we decide what's affordable, what's not per se.
Thanks. I was just wondering if you could make a couple of these slides available to us. We have a faculty meeting this week, and this would be excellent for us to bring to our faculty and an opportunity for our department for us to share that.
That would be awesome if you could share that.
Hi, thank you for the presentation. Perhaps I have a silly comment. You showed a slide, and I'm totally like supporting to give more resources to students, and especially like with ebooks because the cost is going up. Do you have information of how many courses do not require any resources? Because, for example, it will be great to say, okay, we are a small portion of LSU that we are not taking advantage, let's say, of ebooks, but where we're standing in courses that we create our own material and we share and how we compare with others. I'm not going to say like we're like line with statistics or graphs, but not putting extra pressure on us if we, or emphasize if we're doing something good as well, if that makes sense. Thank you.
Yes, if there are no resources required for your course, that is considered AER. You can label your course as an AER course. If you provide your own materials and those materials are openly licensed, then it's OER. But if it's not openly licensed, it's an AER course.
So I just wanted to comment that I'm Helen Regis in geography and anthropology, and we've corresponded a fair amount in the past. And I just want to testify that David responds to emails very quickly, sometimes within the hour. So it's really been amazing. One frustration I've had sometimes is I've had difficulty without going through you, identifying which books could potentially qualify using the library search engine. So that's something that's not quite there yet, maybe, or maybe it's gotten better. But also in my department, we've had some turnover in support staff, which meant that we actually didn't get the opportunity to label our courses. So I'm very happy to learn that we can now do that directly. So thank you for that.
Yeah, if you have any questions about anything, if you're looking to see if your textbook is available for us to purchase, just email me. We do have forms and everything if you feel better about that, but it's quicker if you email me. I can tell you in just a couple of minutes. Yeah. Yeah, we're going to send out some links to some open educational resource repositories for you, OpenStax and Rice University is one of the big ones.
So it's Pam Blanchard. My question is, I created all my materials myself, but I have my students join a national science education organization as a requirement of the course. It's more than $29, whatever it is, $29. Does that?
Yeah, I think that would disqualify you.
I like the idea behind this, but I think it's interesting to relate this to one of the questions brought up by President Bazayev about intellectual property, especially with online courses. I mean, one of the things that I think we're sort of seeing with faculty is that, you know, if we create a textbook and the textbook gets published, there's an award for that, reward for that within our profession. But if we create material in a course, there's not really the same kind of reward for that. And we're going to see a lot more of that as we're sort of pushed and encouraged to make materials affordable, because the textbook companies have absolutely no incentive to do so. And another big issue here is that the more that we use these online access, like the open or affordable access through the libraries, for some faculty, I know this from my own colleagues, that's not great for them because they're rewarded partly on how many textbooks are purchased. And so I'm not faculty, why I'm talking about in terms of their publication and working with these publishers, right? And so there are a lot of strange, perverse incentives at work here that I think we should be aware of, especially in the arena of intellectual property. I'm all for affordability in education, but I don't think we have as much control over that, and we should be careful about how, you know, our behaviors and our actions are then going to eventually kind of, I guess, bounce back at us.
Perhaps the last question. Yeah, come on.
I also want to testify that David answered his email in a very timely manner. This is a comment for the registrar. Up to 2 or 3 years ago, we were asked to tell our department's head or chairs whether our course was classified as a OER or AER. Suddenly, we stopped doing that. And then every semester, we are asked from Barnes and Noble to tell them whether or not we are gonna require textbooks for the students to buy. So we have to find out a way how we can communicate these two things. Because I say, I don't need the textbooks because I have my own textbook. The students just download the textbook from the repository. But the students, like Barnes and Noble told them there is no need of textbook. And they are the only one that so far is asking us whether or the condition of our classes. Like we are not anymore reporting whether we are doing AER or OER. And it will be the moment to start doing that because 2 or 3 years ago we were doing that and suddenly it all stopped.
I would just like to say that it's important for you to put in your request for the bookstore because I get the bookstore adoption list. And that's how I identify the majority of the e-textbooks. And it doesn't require anything on your part other than adopting your textbook. And I do all the work. I go 4,000 entries per semester and I can put it in our list and it goes to Moodle and it puts a block in your Moodle and then I just email you, let you know it's there. So it's very helpful for me if you do that, if you put your adoption into the bookstore.
And as far as your department schedulers and not knowing when to tell them or whatnot, so we communicate with department schedulers and there's an email, a very extensive email that goes out before every scheduling season. And within that email, there is a section that says, please make sure your faculty knows, here's an AER flyer with the definitions, let them know that they can tell you if it's AER, OER, or if it's neither of those. And so your department scheduler is getting that information and is being asked to ask you what the course designation is. If that's not being communicated to you, that's on the department scheduler's responsibilities. Yeah.
I just wanted to say, one of the reasons that we wanted to come in front of everybody is because there are these problems that some of them we can anticipate ourselves, but some of them are going to be the kind of things that are going to come up through discussions with people from a lot of different units that have a lot of different cases. And so, for instance, it can be sort of, it can seem contradictory that you are ordering something from a bookstore that's going to cost a certain amount, expecting to be able, or knowing eventually that an ebook is going to be available. And so, what, for instance, I think I've probably done in the past is thought, well, I know that this source is available by ebook, so I'm going to assign that, and I'm not going to order it through the bookstore. But then there might be things that I'm missing that could be available through ebook that would be. Yes, but now I know to do that. So, and concerns about what this all means for, our evaluations essentially, or if we're doing all this work to create open material, right? That is also something that the faculty senate might want to take up in terms of what criteria are we evaluating faculty on? What role does this play if we are increasingly feeling pressure or doing it because we want to create these open materials, but it's taking time away from things that might get us more credit in terms of what gets us promoted. That's a thing for the faculty to take up as well.
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
And just one last quick thing. I just yesterday literally was on a Zoom meeting with the general manager of Barnes and Noble. Because one thing I noticed was when you're doing the textbook adoption, there was a slider bar for OER, but not for AER, right? And so long story short, he said, as soon as I get off the phone, because I maybe badgered him a bit, but because he said, I think we can get this done, but it'll be a while. I'm like, well, what's a while? and how soon and so forth. So that being said, they are working on, they being their IT team. And I have a son who's a computer scientist. So I'm like, I know how those folks are, no offense. You know, I'm a geek too. But that being said, I talked to Shane Sifke is his name. And so Shane, as the general manager, is working to get that AER slider bar on there. And I think part of the whole thing is we're trying to do is get a lot of moving parts together, right? Because the bookstore has certain things and David Dunaway has certain things and we have certain things as faculty. So we're trying with this committee, which by the way is about 10 people strong. We're just kind of representing today. But we have members from most of the units. So if what you need to know is I'm sure there's many other questions that are not answered here today, we're going to be getting to the executive committee the links that we talked about where you can look up OER, AER, see if there's something for your course. If there isn't, so be it. Where you can likewise get more information. I'll be glad to put my hand on the chopping block in the sense of my email will be on there. And then likewise, if you know, those of us who are here today can't answer, there's very likely someone on the committee from your unit. And so we're trying to get everybody at least knowledge-wise and information-wise in sync so that you can get the most out of this as an opportunity and not have it be, you know, as I said earlier, a burden or yet another thing to do.
Thank you so much for your time. And I want to just thank you for coming to executive committee meeting and then here to the Senate. When you share your links, I will not only share it with the Senate, but I will also include it in our broadcast email to the entire faculty. So please keep me posted with those links. Okay.
We did broadcast email before, but I know how broadcast.
Yeah. Well, people read it when it comes from me, apparently. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you. How can we get on this? We need to, yeah, you're next. Yeah, yeah. So thank you. That didn't work for some reason. So our next order of business is the work of our nominating committee, and the chair, Louis Muhammad, will.
No, I'm not the chair. I just happen to be one of them.
No, sure, but you're the chair for like this minute. So just a few minutes on the nominations so far and who's on.
Yeah, this is the faculty senate nominating committee. It's 4 of us, and we met and he said, who wants to be the chair? And nobody wanted to be the chair. So this committee operates on a shared governance. Basically, we each decided to do a task. And so I'm not sure who is the chair. But at any rate, Kelly's here, Lori, myself, and Robert are on that committee. And we all have one thing in common. We're the exiting members of this year. So you're not going to see us next year if you're coming in next year. And so we send out calls for nomination. And we received the following slate of nomination as of today. And the president, we only had one nomination, vice president and secretary, those three have one nomination. And member at large, we had 4, we elect 2 of them. And so we're collecting bios. We requested to tell us why do they want this position and what is their vision. And we're going to share that with you next meeting in April. And each candidate, we're going to give them, I was told 2 minutes, I believe, and then only 2 minutes. And that is basically, and yes, also, thank you, Dan. And also we will take nomination from the floor as well on that date. So if anyone is interested in running, they could send us either one, any person, they can send us, or we can take nomination from the floor. Yes, yes, that's correct. So we can take nomination from now until the day we vote, basically. So if you have an urge to be serve on the executive committee, this is your chance. Can I take a second to wear my other hat and fight at the front? Okay, I'm gonna wear my Phi Kappa Phi hat for just 1 minute to let you know that the call for award nomination for the outstanding instructor and outstanding non-tenure track professors are out. The due date is April 6th. They went to all chairs and deans. So if you did not get them, make sure you contact them. And we want to give away money. So basically, that's my call. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Well, last but certainly not least is a presentation by the sabbatical committee. And I would like to invite the chair, Michelle Zerba, for her patience and endurance to sit through 2 hours of faculty senate meeting to come and to present their report. And I'll just pull it up. You can.
Okay, you're gonna have the visuals?
Yes.
for them?
Mhm. There it is.
The text of the recommendation.
The text of the recommendation is right here.
It's right there.
Yeah. So if
Okay.
you don't mind just scrolling. It's right,
Okay.
yeah. that would be-
Good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear? Is this on? Yes? Good. Okay, great. Good afternoon. We were a committee of 5 voting members and 2 ex officio members. We had on the committee that was charged with reviewing the existing sabbatical provision within PS 12. We were charged with looking at it and making recommendations to the Faculty Senate Executive Committee, who will be working with academic affairs and addressing some of these matters. So we had representation from the College of Music and Dramatic Arts, from the Chemistry Department and the Center from Computational Technology. Both of those were professorial members of the committee. We had an instructor from the Department of English. We had the director of the Center for River Studies, who is also a faculty member in the Department of Civil and Environmental Engineering, and I was the chair of the committee. The ex officio members were 2 associate deans. One of them was Mike Pasquier from HSS, and the second one was Rob Brumfeld from the College of Science. So we also, I should say, before beginning with what it is we have come forward with in the way of recommendations, say that we consulted with Senior Vice Provost Cassidy and with the Assistant VP for Policy and Administration, Ryan Landry. I see both of them are here today. And we also consulted with the Human Resource Management Office to have several questions answered. So we have come up with a recommendation that we will present to the Faculty Senate Executive Committee in consultation with the Office of Academic Affairs. I will say that a great deal of what it is we discussed had to do with the disconnect between the policy statement on sabbatical leave and what we actually practice at LSU by way of granting sabbatical leave. So would you like to read the existing PS 12 to see what we're looking to revise, or shall I just come forward and read the recommendation of the committee? Okay, so everybody saw that. So we are recommending simply a revision of what is currently in PS 12, the section that is labeled A, and that is criteria for eligibility. And so the recommendation is this, that it now read, full-time tenured faculty who have completed 6 years of service at the university and who have not taken a sabbatical in the last 6 years are eligible for sabbatical leave to conduct study and research. A condition for the granting of sabbatical is the potential benefit the university will receive as a result of the sabbatical. Those who petition for sabbatical must include adequate justification, setting forth the plans for sabbatical leave, and must promptly report the accomplishments under each leave upon return from sabbatical. Faculty members may apply in the year prior to being eligible, provided they are eligible in the award year. They must either be tenured or coming up for tenure during the evaluation year.
And by the award year, they must meet the eligibility requirements of tenure and 6 years of service since the last sabbatical. The academic year in which a sabbatical is taken is not counted toward the next 6 years of full-time service. A faculty member, however, who has been awarded a research grant or fellowship may count the period funded by the award toward the next 6 years of full-time service. That is the proposal that we will offer as a recommendation for PS 12. But we would also like to note that basically we are operating under the wording in PS 12, which is a cut and paste from the PM 12. There was one word in the current policy statement that is our current PS 12 that we recommend that the executive committee in consultation with academic affairs look at, and that has to do with the word continuous. The word continuous service appears in PM 12. It does not appear in PS 12, and we recommend that it be taken out of PM 12 if that's possible. But if it's not, then we recommend that as a campus that is writing its own version of PM 12, that we maintain the current wording, which omits continuous. The other thing that we would want to say, because there was a great deal of discussion that surrounded this matter, is that, as you know, the current PS 12 opens sabbatical leaves to instructors. And a great deal of our conversation had to do with how we wanted to act on the opportunity to advise the Faculty Senate and Academic Affairs about this. So the committee was split. I think it's important to say it was split in the 5 votes that we had, with the 3 votes that carried this recommendation being what I've just read to you. But we've also suggest that the Faculty Senate Executive Committee pass on the following paragraph. The Faculty Senate Sabbatical Review Committee strongly recommends that the Faculty Senate, in consultation with the Office of Academic Affairs, appoint a committee to establish a periodic leave with pay program for senior instructors or higher and professionals and residents that would be designed with their professional development and service to the university in mind. That was the sum of it.
Am I on? Okay. That this committee was created last semester in a resolution, and the resolution also states that Michelle should consider the feedback that she receives today, but it's under their purview to include it, under their discretion to include it or exclude it in their final report to the executive committee and to academic affairs. Mm-hmm. So are there any questions or feedback, comments? Mm-hmm. What's already there actually has been reworded quite a bit as pertains to the eligibility requirement. We considered a number of matters that were presented to us by academic affairs as difficulties that sometimes arise in the process of attempting to determine a sabbatical leave, and they had to do with time on the clock. They had to do with stopping and starting the clock. They had to do with the question of the timing for non-tenured assistant professors, the timing that is involved in their applying for sabbatical when they're not yet tenured. There are a number of important changes in and I suggest that you look at them and compare and contrast the wording. The main thing is that we begin, though, that sabbaticals are for full-time tenured faculty of completed 6 years of service. A red line version, it would be possible. I did not know that I was going to do that today, so I'm not prepared to do that.
Oh, yes, it would be no problem drawing it up. I simply don't have it for today. Yeah, I would say that this is not as minor, a sort of redlining, if the example today is true to the way in which we work these things. It's more extensive. It's more extensive. In other words, there's substantial changes in the wording of PS 12 under the A category than one might think on the basis of other motions and amendments to motions that have been made here today. So it might be hard to actually have a red line copy of this, to be honest with you, because the wording was changed significantly in from the current PS 12A. Yes. Sure. No, there's no problem with that. I would just say that the red line is a kind of literal thing you might do by putting it in front of people really is not going to work so well here. So, but we were very happy to put the two up side by side and of course answer any questions you might have about how, why, and wherefore we propose this as the recommendation to academic affairs.
PS 12 in the email. So you can just go to, it's literally that one paragraph. Yeah. If that's easier to. Sure. Mhm. Yeah. Mhm.
Happy to do that.
Yeah, Param, go ahead.
So
Yeah.
thank you. First of all, thank you very much for your service. I am fully supportive of this idea about giving the freedom to the instructors and professionals in residence to explore 6 months or 1 year and under the sabbatical policy, if we can refine it, review it. I was wondering if there was any discussion from the budget perspectives, because the instructors are budgeted very differently, department-wise, unit-wise, and this might impact various budget situations, especially we are passing through a transition in the way we'll be budgeted. So was there any discussion on this particular angle from the committee?
There was definitely a conversation on the general question of there being an impact of a financial sort that we should take into account. What we don't have is anything like figures that we would be able to present to you of what a possible fallout might be. But because instructors, by virtue of their job position, don't engage in research, we encountered immediately the problem of not being able to, it being very difficult to evaluate proposals for sabbatical at a university that has historically given them only to professorial faculty for research purposes. The other thing that we considered, of course, is that if we add instructors actually in our practice at LSU, if we actually engage in the practice of enlarging the pool of instructors, that would have a serious impact upon sabbaticals for professorial faculty who are required by their job description to produce research and to be judged, or evaluated every year on the basis of research. So there definitely was a question about that. And I think in general, there was concern that enlarging the sabbatical pool at this point might not be the best thing for LSU to be doing if we are already being targeted for tenure problems by the state legislature. That by enlarging the pool of individuals who might be actually considered for sabbatical, by enlarging that pool, we might actually be drawing fire. So I think it's important that if you read the first sentence of PS 12, it says that instructors or their equivalent and higher are eligible for petitioning for sabbatical leave. And so a great deal of the discussion of the committee had to do with how it is that language made its way into our PS 12. And we had a great deal of conversation also about the fact that even though that is the policy statement, it's not the practice. No. Right. So I repeat, full-time tenured faculty who have completed 6 years of service at the university and who've not taken a sabbatical in the last 6 years are eligible for sabbatical leave to conduct study and research. That is a considerable, that is a revision of the not only the first sentence, but the entire paragraph.
Well, for me, I'm going to say this is a sea change. I won't say a major revision. This is reclassifying faculty and the instructors. The instructors already are very hardworking. I understand the reason for this, but I don't like the fact that instructors who are faculty are professionals in residence faculty or not.
They're defined by faculty, by PS, statements at LSU.
So basically, I think whoever's done this needs to really have an outreach, especially to instructors. They do a large amount of heavy lifting. They already feel underpaid. They already feel overworked with all these new things coming down all the time at them. As I said multiple times, I know instructors that teach 800 plus students. With the new ODS rules coming in, they can have 40 plus students they're having to monitor at all times, which is a very big burden to what they had before. The annual reporting on them, this progress report, is another major burden on them when they're teaching an introductory class. So basically 700 to 750 of those students have to report every single individual one. This is again telling them, no, you're second class. And I think I can understand the reasons for this, but when you bring this up to instructors, I think basically, and I'm going to say this, academic affairs, I think has to have a discussion with instructors, because some of them are basically seeing, when they basically compare what a graduate student will get paid, they're seeing the new pays. Some of them are very close to what our instructors get paid. So they're basically being told their PhD is useless. They could go and become a PhD student and leave the university, which I personally, I don't want to lose our instructors. They are a core part of how this university, as a state university, can basically teach the very heavy load of students we have. I don't know how many people here teach 250 student classes. 3 of those is an unbelievable workload. We're not talking 10 to 20 students. We're talking 800 students a semester. If 10% of them take leave for sickness with the new PS22, that's 80 students to schedule makeup exams for, on top of ODS, on top of everything else. So I really think that there has to be a major discussion with the faculty senate about our instructors and really figuring out how they can be supported as well.
Well, let me say that I completely agree with you, and that the committee discussed this at length over many hours. There's not a person on the committee who did not feel that the instructors at this university, and especially in certain departments like the Department of English, of which I'm a part, do a heavy amount of work for the university at a pitiful pay. There is no doubt about that. There was absolutely no controversy in the committee about that. The question we were given was whether the sabbatical leave policy needed to be revised to reflect the reality on the ground, and also the contradictions between the PS statement and the practice of the university. Instructors are not given sabbaticals. It was, yep, all I'm saying is that I wanted to be clear that that is something that the university, that this committee discussed at great length.
I know chemistry, we did not hire the instructors for this. We did not do it. A lot of instructors are studies of faculty. That will have a dominant effect for the faculty at the top of it. And just sort of saying that, I'm not saying you're doing it. I just want academic affairs to understand. This is a teacher. And when instructors see this, they're going to see a major thing that puts LSU separate from the paper. And that's going to get them hard just in terms of their
I want to share with you the fact that I consulted with the chair of the Department of English, who's involved in a lot of these decisions, because as you're probably aware, we have a very large staff of instructors at the university in the Department of English. And she actually has discussed these matters both with Sarah Rosser, who is the instructor who's on the committee, and myself, and has sent out an email to the department at large explaining what the complications are in maintaining a PS statement that in fact does extend sabbaticals to instructors. So this is not new. It's already, there's a lot of information out there already. It's already circulating. Yeah. Mhm. Okay. The other thing I should say is that we began in the committee with not a person around the table knowing that PS-12 extended sabbaticals to instructors. Instructors didn't know it, and professorial faculty on the committee didn't know it. So there is there's just a huge divide here, and what we are attempting to do is simply make recommendations to the executive committee based on the resources that were made available to us, and a lot of talk, on all sides of the question. Please, yes.
No, it's fine. I just had a quick question about changing the wording. Oops, sorry. Well, I need to read it. So, in the original one, it said that you could apply for sabbatical leave for study and research that would enable you to increase your professional efficacy and usefulness to the university. And now that's just been changed to you can apply as if it's useful to the university. And I'm curious about why the change for that and taking it away from professional development so much, and just sort of how do you benefit the university just at only?
Shall I respond, or are these comments? Yeah. Well, one of the things I think the committee was initially puzzled by is the utilitarian language of PS-12, which has to do with benefits to the university and usefulness to the university. It sounds very instrumentalizing and utilitarian. And we don't have any answers to that, but I will say this, that historically in the United States, sabbaticals began first to be used at Harvard University, I think in the 1880s. And at that point, they were imagined as periods of cultivated leisure for professorial faculty to refresh their minds, refresh their research agendas. It was very much this concept that you've served the university and now you may, go out and, as it were, nurture your mind and your research agenda and come back restored. But we also found that probably in the late 80s and certainly picking up in the 90s and early 2000s, as the universities in our country have moved more and more towards business models, that language changed profoundly in sabbatical policies around the country. So the other thing I want to say is we look at a lot of sabbatical leave policies at our peer institutions and also around the country. And this was a major shift in the language. This was a major shift in the language and the way in which sabbaticals were being presented, to the faculty, what their place in the university was. We decided that that utilitarian language would have been, to have changed that would have been fighting another fight, as it were. Nobody, I mean, we've heard eloquently here today that faculty feel instrumentalized and used already. We didn't, we're not supporting that by keeping that language. We're simply saying that that reflects a lot of the shift in academia in general and in universities across the country about what sabbaticals are what their purpose is in the university. Mhm. Yes, please.
Sorry, I'm just next.
I'm sorry. Yeah.
So Adriano, what's a veterinary medicine? I just have a question. When does the 6 years start? Does it start at tenure or, for example, in my case, I'm on abbreviated tenure track, so I come up for tenure review after 3 years.
Right.
Will those
No.
3 years count, or does this clock start at the time you get tenure?
No, the clock does not start at the time you get tenure. Because you simply have to have gotten tenure before you can actually take the sabbatical. So pardon me. Yes, it starts with the first year, the first semester of the first year that you're hired.
Thank you.
Mhm.
I was just going to respond. So, it seems like all the leave at this university, like leave that happens after your third year review and after your tenure or whatever, has this language. And I'm just thinking on the stuff I just filled out, and it bounces back to outcomes, because efficacy is a cognition that you can't really measure, but usefulness to the university is something you can measure with outcomes. And the framing of it, at least in the documents I've been filling out, take that stance. So I think this usefulness idea probably reflects the need for outcomes. Somewhere in there it says that you're going to say what your outcomes were at the end. And if efficacy is the thing you're measuring, that's not something we measure with outcomes.
Thank you for that, because we're also observing that one of the shifts now that is reflected, in the procedures by which we consider this question of sabbaticals, that well, how to say it? Your point was that the language. Yes. So, we are now being asked to write grants and all sorts of proposals, including sabbaticals, which have become kind of semi-grants almost, in terms of what the deliverables are going to be. That's the language that we use now. They want to see products at the end of a sabbatical. And as you know, if you've gotten a sabbatical recently as a professorial faculty member, they want to know typically what articles you've published and what books you published, or the progress toward the publication of a book. And we've more and more gone to that point where usefulness is a term that is, again, instrumentalizing and utilitarian, but it reflects the fact that we are now in a university setting, not just here, but across the country, where measurement of such things as sabbaticals is done in terms of concrete products, like the production of articles and books.
I was given a very different interpretation for sabbatical by an academic historian. It was a way of basically giving quasi-paid vacation, because basically we get 1 or 2 weeks of paid vacation only in the year. Most of the people, especially at the senior professor level, would get 6 weeks. So sabbatical, when you look at it, each month, 6 years, you get 6 months paid. That was sort of the idea, but that was way back from somebody who basically did it way back in the day. And I think that's been completely translated, but that was sort of the idea of this rejuvenation, but rejuvenation to bring value back to the university. And some person said jokingly, yeah, they basically spend their vacation to bring value back to university, get more money into our coffers. This is fantastic. But that was sort of a very old interpretation of, I believe, where the tenure at one point sort of came from.
It might be something for academic affairs to consider, whether they want to change that language. to something that is less utilitarian and instrumentalizing than it is now, but we didn't think that that was the business of the committee.
I'd like to move to adjourn because we're over 5:30.
Yeah. If you have any further questions and comments, please email them to me and I'll forward it to the committee. So thank you so much for your time. Wait, is there a motion to adjourn? Okay. Okay, so moved. See you next month.